I never imagined my daughter would be capable of this. Not Emily. Not the little girl who used to fall asleep with her head on my lap, clutching the same stuffed rabbit every night. But people change. Sometimes because they want to. Sometimes because someone else wants them to. I'm Martha. 68 years old. Widow. Retired high school literature teacher. I live alone in the house by Lake Milford, Michigan. It's the house I grew up in, raised my daughter in, and plan to die in peacefully on my own terms. I thought I had a quiet future ahead of me. I didn't see the storm coming until it was too late. 2 years ago, Emily introduced me to a man named Owen. She said they met at a conference for trauma psychology in Chicago, where she was presenting. He was charming, smart, and smooth. Too smooth. The kind of man who didn't blink when you looked too long into his eyes. There was something in him that set me on edge, like a sliver under the skin, small but irritating. I smiled, I asked polite questions, I played the role of a supportive mother. But I watched. It started subtly. Emily began visiting less. She canceled our Sunday breakfasts, forgot birthdays. When we did speak, she was distant, irritated, like every question I asked was an intrusion. I blamed work. I blamed stress. I even blamed myself. But one day she said something that made my heart freeze. You know, Owen found something strange about Dad's old letters. He said some of them don't add up. He's been helping me look into it. I blinked. What do you mean, don't add up? She hesitated, then looked away. He thinks. Maybe Dad wasn't actually my biological father. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emily, I said slowly, that's not true. Your father. But she cut me off. Just don't lie to me, Mom. That was the beginning of it. Of everything unraveling. From then on, she spoke less and less to me directly. All messages came through Owen. He began handling her phone, her finances, even her appointments. When I invited them for Thanksgiving, it was Owen who replied. Emily's not feeling up to family right now. And yet, the next day I saw pictures of them at a friend's holiday dinner, smiling with wine glasses in hand. I began to feel like a stranger in my daughter's life. And yet, when she called 2 months later, all soft-voiced and apologetic, saying, "We'd love to spend some time at your lake house, maybe for our honeymoon," something in me cracked. Not broke, just shifted. I told her I'd think about it. Then I called a private investigator. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe to confirm the knot in my stomach wasn't paranoia. Maybe to prove to myself that I hadn't lost touch with reality. His name was Harold Macklin. Retired police, calm voice, no nonsense. I gave him Owen's full name and what little I knew. I didn't expect much. 3 weeks later, Harold showed up at my doorstep with a manila envelope. "You might want to sit down, Mrs. Carter." The name in the file wasn't Owen. It was Richard Allen Price. He had changed names 3 times over the last 15 years. Accusations of financial manipulation, identity fraud, coercion. All sealed. All never brought to full trial. Every woman he'd been involved with had been isolated from their families, and every single one had signed over property or assets to him shortly before their relationships ended. He had no social media. No birth certificate that matched the name I knew. Even his college degree appeared falsified. I felt like the floor had fallen out from under me. I asked Harold, "Why, Emily? Why now?" He shrugged, but there was a grim look in his eyes. "Because she has something he wants. This place. The house. The lakefront. The value had more than doubled in the last decade. Quiet, beautiful, and fully in my name. That night I sat alone at my kitchen table, a cup of untouched tea cooling beside me, and I wrote down one thing in my notebook. They're trying to erase me, but I'm still here. The next morning I began making calls. First to my attorney, then to my bank. I froze every joint account. I rewrote my will. I assigned financial power of attorney, not to Emily as it had been, but to a neighbor named Kelly, a young nurse who lived across the road and had brought me casseroles every other Sunday for years without asking anything in return. She once drove me to the ER when my hip acted up. That was the kind of person I wanted holding the keys if anything happened to me. I also added a clause to my estate. The house could not be inherited by anyone who had been investigated for financial misconduct or changed their legal name in the past 20 years. It was the neatest legal way to cut Owen out without ever naming him. Emily didn't know yet, but she would. The invitation came 2 weeks later. A glossy envelope, pastel pink. You are invited to the wedding of Emily Carter and Owen Bennett. I stared at the name, his latest alias, and set the envelope down without opening it. The same day she called. Mom, did you get the invite? We really hope you can come. I paused. That depends. Am I a guest or a prop? She laughed nervously. What does that mean? I mean, do you want me there because you want me? Or because you want the house to feel more like a gift from Mom and Dad? Silence. Then, you're being paranoid. Am I? She hung up. A week later, Harold called again. I dug a little more. Thought you should know, Owen or Richard filed paperwork with the county 2 months ago. A transfer of ownership form. All blank. Looks like he was planning ahead. Planning ahead to steal my home. I called my lawyer again. We secured a block on any transfers, closed off access to my tax records, and added a monitoring alert to all real estate activity in the county tied to my address. Then I waited. Emily showed up the following weekend, all sugar-sweet and guilty-eyed. She brought pastries. Owen or Richard stayed in the car. I'm sorry, Mom, she said. It's been a weird year. We just wanted to reconnect. I looked her straight in the eye. I hired a private investigator. Her face went pale. I know who he is. I know what he's done. And I know what you've been manipulated into believing. She tried to deny it. Then she cried. Then she screamed. She called me cruel, bitter, jealous. That I was trying to ruin her happiness. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. You are still my daughter. But you're not the same girl I raised. And until that changes, you are not welcome in this house. She left shaking, mascara smeared, door slammed behind her. That night I sat on the porch with Kelly. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she looked me in the eye and said, "You did the right thing." And for the first time in a long time I believed it. I didn't hear from Emily for a full month after our last conversation. No calls, no texts, no emails. Just silence, heavy, deliberate, almost theatrical. I suppose they thought I'd come crawling back. That I'd panic and beg to be part of their celebration. But I'd spent too many years being quiet to keep doing it now. I used the silence wisely. Harold continued digging. He sent me updates every few days, often accompanied by brief notes in his blunt, matter-of-fact tone. Thought you'd want to see this. More details on the Colorado woman. Pattern confirmed. A pattern. That's what it was. Not just a series of bad relationships, a blueprint. Richard, formerly Owen, previously known as Derek Sims, had been married twice before. Once to a woman named Teresa Lang in Vermont. The marriage lasted 11 months. She transferred ownership of a lakeside property to him 6 weeks before filing for bankruptcy. She claimed he'd convinced her to quit her job, put everything in his name for security, and slowly isolated her from everyone she knew. She now lived in a studio apartment, off disability payments, and refused to talk to reporters. I saw her photo. Her eyes looked hollow. The second marriage was to a woman in Colorado, Gina Romero. Less paper trail, but Harold found hospital records, broken wrist, fractured rib, psychological evaluations. No charges were filed. Her family said she moved to Arizona under a different name. Vanished from the map. I spent hours reading everything. My eyes burned. My hands trembled. Not just from age but fury. Emily was walking straight into a trap she couldn't see. She thought she was in control. She wasn't even holding the map. Meanwhile, preparations for the wedding were in full swing. I saw it all unfold on social media. A bachelorette brunch in a vineyard. Matching silk robes. Cake tastings. Hashtags like hashtag Bennett Bride and hashtag Love on the Lake. My name was never mentioned, but my house, my lake house, was. A photographer posted, "Can't wait to shoot this gorgeous couple's honeymoon at the most serene lakefront spot in Milford. Thank you to the bride's family for the generosity." Family. They meant me. I called my lawyer again. We finalized a restriction that legally barred anyone from using my home for commercial photography or rentals without explicit, signed permission. Then I sent an anonymous message to the photographer. The house you're planning to photograph is private property, currently under legal restriction. Any unauthorized use will result in legal action. They pulled the post the next morning. Still, I knew I needed more than legal protections. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was about exposing a man who built his entire life on lies. Harold and I put together a file. Over 60 pages. Copies of legal name changes. Testimonies. Photos. Sealed police records. Real estate transfers. Statements from women he dated under different names. We found one in Florida who'd been left with over $40,000 in debt after he emptied their shared account. She hadn't even known he wasn't who he claimed to be until the bank came after her. I asked Harold, "Why hasn't he ever been prosecuted?" He shrugged. "He's smart. Knows how to pick them. Educated, isolated, emotionally vulnerable. He changes just enough to stay ahead of the law, but not enough to disappear completely." And now he had chosen Emily. My Emily. Who had once cried when her goldfish died. Who used to beg me to read her Charlotte's Web every night for a year straight. Who still had a scar above her left eyebrow from when she tripped chasing fireflies. I didn't want revenge. I wanted her safe. And I knew she wouldn't listen to me. Not until she saw the truth with her own eyes. So I made a plan. I compiled everything, every page of documentation, and put it into a clean, crisp binder. On the cover, I simply wrote, "For Emily. Before you say, I do." Inside the front pocket, I tucked a letter. "Dear Emily, I know you don't want to hear from me right now. I know you think I'm trying to sabotage your happiness. But the truth can't wait until it's too late. Read this. Please. Not because I'm your mother, but because somewhere inside you, you still believe in your own instincts. And I believe in that part of you more than you know. Love, Mom." I wrapped the binder in white tissue paper and placed it inside a gift box. Then I tied it with a pale blue ribbon, her favorite color growing up. I thought about mailing it. I considered giving it to Harold to deliver. But in the end, I wanted her to know it came directly from me. So I waited until the night before the rehearsal dinner. The house she and Owen Richard were renting was just outside town. A modern place with big windows and stone accents. I parked down the street and walked quietly to the door. No lights on inside, but the porch camera blinked red. I knew they'd see me. I wanted them to. I set the box gently at the foot of the door. No note on the outside. Just the box. Just the ribbon. Then I walked away. I didn't expect to sleep that night. And I didn't. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The image of her face when she opened that box burned into my mind, imagined a dozen different ways. Shock. Anger. Denial. Maybe even tears. Emily opened the box alone. It sat on the kitchen counter for nearly 2 hours after she found it. She told me later she just stared at it, hands trembling, her stomach in knots. Something about the weight of it, the careful ribbon, the lack of a card, felt heavier than any gift should. She said she knew it was from me. She also knew it wasn't a peace offering. When she finally opened it, the first thing she saw was the letter. She read it 3 times. Then, cautiously, she lifted the binder from the paper. She told me her hand shook as she flipped through the pages. Legal records. Property deeds. Photocopies of marriage certificates. Police complaints. Photos of Richard or Owen, in different towns under different names with different women. Always the same pattern. Closeness, control, and then disappearance. Every woman left with less than she had before he came. She called me just after midnight. Her voice was unsteady. "Mom," she said. "Is this real?" I didn't ask what she meant. I just answered, "Yes." "I don't know what to believe." "That's exactly why I left it for you." She was silent. Then slowly, "I need to see you." She arrived at my house before sunrise. Her hair was tied back in a tight bun. She hadn't slept. Her hands were red from holding the steering wheel too hard, and her mascara was still smudged under her eyes. She looked like a woman teetering on the edge of 2 versions of reality. We sat in the living room. Neither of us touched the tea I'd made. "I need to hear it from someone else," she said. "I still feel like this is some kind of twisted manipulation, like you're trying to scare me." So I called Harold. He came over an hour later with his same quiet professionalism. Emily sat across from him, arms crossed tightly across her chest, defensive but listening. Harold didn't embellish. He didn't dramatize. He told her facts. Dates. Names. Details. His voice was steady, the way people speak when they know truth doesn't need to be shouted. When he showed her a photo of Owen with Teresa Lang, her arm in a sling, standing beside a sold sign on a Vermont cabin, something in Emily's face shifted. Crack in the glass. Then came the final piece, a recording. It was old. A voicemail left by Gina Romero, frantic and breathless. He's not who he says he is. He changed his name again. He emptied my account and now he's gone. I don't know what to do. I think I'm losing my mind. Emily stood up and walked out of the room. She stayed on the porch for almost an hour. I didn't follow. Harold didn't speak. When she came back in, her voice was quieter. If it's true, if even half of this is true. It is, Harold said. She turned to me. What do I do now? I didn't answer. I waited. She looked down, then whispered. He still doesn't know I read it. Harold spoke gently. Then you have a choice. We talked for hours. By the time Emily left, the plan was in motion. She would go through with the wedding. She'd act as if nothing had changed. She'd smile. She'd pose. She'd walk down the aisle. And right before the ceremony, she'd test him. She'd tell Owen that my lake house had burned down the night before. Completely destroyed. That I was safe but uninsured. That everything was gone. She'd watch his reaction. That was all. We agreed on one thing. A man who loved her wouldn't care about a house. The day of the wedding was warm and cloudless. A rented vineyard outside Milford, full of white chairs and strings of fairy lights. Dozens of guests gathered in pastel-colored outfits, holding champagne flutes and smiling for the photographer. Emily wore a satin dress, simple and elegant. Her makeup was flawless. Her expression unreadable. She approached Owen 10 minutes before the ceremony. He was standing near the arbor talking to his best man. She gently pulled him aside and took his hand. Her voice was low, rehearsed. Something happened, she said. Last night. He frowned. What? My mom's house. The lake house. It burned down. Completely. She got out. But everything's gone. She didn't have insurance. She said it clearly, evenly. No emotion. Just facts. She watched his eyes. They didn't widen in concern. His hands didn't tighten around hers. Instead, his lips parted slightly. He blinked once. Then again. And then, for the first time since she'd met him, he stammered. No insurance? Emily said nothing. Are you sure? I mean, how that house was worth. He stopped himself. She tilted her head. What? He glanced away, then forced a smile. I'm sorry. I'm just shocked. I know how much she loved that place. She won't be coming today. Of course not. His hand dropped from hers. His eyes kept flicking toward the guests, toward the venue, toward the altar. Emily said, You okay? I need a minute. He walked away. The ceremony was supposed to start at 4 o'clock. At 3:57, he hadn't returned. At 4:03, the wedding planner started looking around, whispering to groomsmen. At 4:06, Owen Richard was found crouched near the dressing area, holding his head. I'm not feeling well, he said. Chest. Dizzy. I think something's wrong. An ambulance was called. He was wheeled out before most guests knew what was happening. And that was the last time anyone saw him. The hospital said he never arrived. The EMTs reported he left in the ambulance, calm and breathing normally. But when the vehicle stopped at a light 2 blocks away, he slipped out of the restraints and vanished into the trees. Gone. No note. No calls. No explanation. Emily filed a missing person report, but no one believed he was actually in danger. I didn't go to the wedding. I stayed home waiting for her to call. It was just after 11 p.m. When the phone rang, I hadn't been able to sleep. The silence in the house felt louder than usual, stretched too thin by everything that had happened. I picked up on the second ring. It was Emily, and she was sobbing. I didn't know who else to call, she said through tears. I didn't know where to go. You don't have to go anywhere, I said quietly. I'll come to you. She was still at the venue. Alone. Most guests had left hours ago. A few remained, confused and hovering, unsure of what to say. I got dressed, grabbed my keys and drove. When I pulled up, she was sitting on the stone steps outside the main building. Shoes off, dress crumpled, mascara running in streaks. She looked so small. Like the little girl who once cried because she thought her balloon had floated into the stars. She stood up when she saw me and fell into my arms without a word. I held her for a long time. Neither of us said anything. That night she came home with me. She didn't ask. She just followed me to the car like she had nowhere else in the world to be. I made tea she didn't drink. I laid out blankets she never used. She just curled up on the couch and cried herself into silence. The next day she barely spoke. The day after that, she slept until afternoon and stared out the window like she was waiting for something. A knock on the door. A call. A reason. But nothing came. And eventually she began to breathe again. She asked me questions. Read the binder again. Asked Harold for more details. She apologized over and over, sometimes in words, sometimes just in the way she looked at me. The kind of look a child gives when they realize the person they pushed away was the only one who ever stood beside them. We went to the police together. Harold handed them everything. All the documents, the names, the recordings. Emily gave her statement, voice clear and unwavering. She didn't ask for pity. She asked for justice. 3 days later they found him. He'd booked a room at a mid-range motel an hour outside of Milford. Under his real name, Richard Allen Price. Surveillance showed him checking in the day before the wedding, alone, with 2 bags and a briefcase. No rental car. No accomplice. He hadn't even bothered to flee far. When they questioned him, he was calm. Claimed he panicked at the wedding. Said he'd had a sudden medical episode. When asked why he hadn't contacted anyone, not even his fiancée, he shrugged. Didn't think she'd want to hear from me. They never got to ask about the house fire. He didn't know there wasn't one. He ran, she whispered. He didn't even check if I was okay. He just ran. She paused. Because there was nothing left for him to take. And she was right. He pleaded out to fraud charges from prior cases. The police had been tracking him quietly, but never had enough victim testimony to hold him. Now they did. Emily's voice, her statement, her willingness to be public, helped bring down a man who had stolen years and futures from women all over the country. But even then I knew the story wasn't over. She stayed with me for nearly a month. She helped in the garden. She cooked, clumsily burning pancakes and apologizing like a child again. She asked about her father, really asked. She said sorry for the things she'd said. For believing someone else over me. I forgave her. Not because I had to. 'Cause I wanted to. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. After everything, I knew I couldn't go back to how things were. I couldn't pretend we hadn't stood on opposite sides of a lie. So I rewrote my will again. This time I didn't leave everything to Kelly, my neighbor, though she remained in it. I gave her half. The other half I gave to Emily, under specific legally binding terms. She would inherit only if any future partner of hers, husband, fiancé or otherwise, never had access to that property. He couldn't live in it unless it was jointly purchased or legally transferred with my full knowledge. No shared ownership, no free access, no signing over. The house would remain hers alone, or not at all. Emily signed it without hesitation. She didn't even ask to change the terms. I don't want anyone else to own me again, she said. And I don't want anyone else taking what you spent your life protecting. We never talked about Richard again. What would you have done in my place?